Ready to host your first webinar? Today I'm going to share with you exactly how to host your first webinar, step by step. I also get questions on how I create my coggles, these mind maps that I create when I do my training. So as we're going through the step-by-step process of how to host your first webinar, I'm also going to show you how we're going to create this coggle. Now you can just go to coggle.it in order to get started. Some of the features that I have are a part of the paid plan, like uploading larger images, but you can do all this with the free plan as well. The first step when you are ready to host your first webinar is to write your webinar. So I've already put that one in there, is just to write your webinar. If you need help with that, I have created a training on how to write your webinar. I'm going to share the image here. It's a live training that I did about how to write a webinar in 20 minutes. Okay, so that's the first training that's going to expand on this. As you're getting ready to write your webinar, there's some research that goes into it. You need to know what beliefs you've got to break down. You need to know what your offer is. You've got to have your pitch solid. There's a lot of pieces that go into that. And I share some of that in that live training. So definitely go check that out. The next thing that you'll do is create a landing page. A landing page is simply where you're going to capture those email addresses when someone comes to sign up for your webinar. You can do this for a live or an automated webinar. I have a video training, once again, right here on YouTube that shows you how to create your webinar landing page. So definitely watch that video as well. Okay, the next thing you'll do is you'll create an ad based on the landing page. Now, I don't quite have a video on this one yet, so I'm just going to put this in short form and we'll come right back to it. Then you're going to email your list. And we're going to put this one here. Invite people. You've got to invite people, which also is email your list. So let's say email your list. That's going to be included in inviting people. I do have a video on how to get webinar registration, so I'm going to include that one here as well. I've created an entire playlist to help you with hosting your webinar, so I will be including that here as we go along. All right, before you get ready to host, you'll set up webinar software. Now, there are a couple of options that you have with this. Okay, you can do a webinar on Facebook Live, YouTube Live. You can purchase a webinar hosting software. I typically do my free webinars directly inside of either Facebook or YouTube Live. So let's say set up your webinar software. If you want to do a free option and use Facebook Live, also have a training on how to host your webinar for free using Facebook Live. So I'm going to include that one there. Okay. Then finally, you will provide your link during your webinar. So I'm just kind of fleshing out the checklist right now, and then we'll go back through each piece. Okay. You'll obviously go live and then you'll send a link to the replay. So we're going to put that one here as well. We don't need that one, so we'll just backspace, not tab, backspace. Okay. And then we'll add here, send a link to the replay. All right, first thing, when you're hosting your first webinar, obviously you want to start with writing out your webinar. When you write your webinar, you're going to need a couple things. You're going to need some research. You got to know what your hook is. You have to have that engaging content. You have to know what are those things that your audience actually needs. How can you serve them? How can you help them on the webinar? It takes some time to fully write out a webinar. In the span of 20 minutes, if you have a formula, you can quickly pull together a good enough webinar. And I've certainly done that in the past and still made sales. However, when you really want to make sales with your webinar, then it's going to take you a little bit more time. It's going to take a little bit more research, and it's going to take you practicing it a little bit and really getting good with your presentation skills. So when we say write your webinar in 20 minutes, we're talking about more than just writing out the outline. Okay? We want good presentation skills. Where's our plus sign? All right. We want good presentation skills. We want the research. And what does the research look like? Well, the research looks like figuring out your ideal clients' doubts, their frustrations, what's holding them back, so their struggles. That's essentially what you're going to do inside of your research. Okay, you want to make sure, obviously, you have great presentation skills as you're writing. Try not to stumble over your words. One of the best ways that I like to do this is I like to actually host my webinar and essentially kind of hide behind my slides, and I create a full webinar script. In order to do a full webinar script without taking forever to write one, I like to use what I call a webinar formula, and it basically makes it that much easier for you to create your webinar when you're using a formula. Okay? Now, the formula that I use is called the anti-webinar. This is one that I've created based on a lot of studying that I've done under copywriters, marketing mentors, and really bringing all of this together to make a webinar that is not only engaging, but it also makes sales. And people walk away feeling like this was the best webinar they've ever been to. Okay? Your audience walks away happy. And I've heard this from several clients who have used this webinar where they say that people are contacting them saying it's the best webinar that they've heard. Now that's great, but it's also great to hear the chings and the dings that come in when people actually pay with their card. And those same clients were making sales from their webinar as well. Okay, so presentation skills are important. Your research is important, and that's when you can really pull together a webinar within 20 minutes or so. Ideally, when I write my webinars, they take me anywhere from 1 to 3 days if I really want to write a good, solid webinar, pulling together things like testimonials and really getting deeper into the research. Okay, so that's number one, is write your webinar. I like using a Google Doc. Typically I will mind map using a Kaggle just like this and start mind mapping out what I want to say and how I want to structure my webinar. Okay, so that's step one. You can check this box once you've done that. Once you can say, I've written my webinar, I've practiced my presentation, I have a full webinar script, I created my webinar using a proven formula, I researched my webinar, I included testimonials, you can check those points off. If you'd like to learn more about the anti-webinar, you can just go to youvegotclients.com/anti-webinar, and all the details are there. So I will leave that link in there. All right. I hope you can see how easy it is to use Kaggle. I really, really do like this software. Okay. The next step is creating your landing page. So what does your landing page need to have in order to make this a strong landing page? Well, we're going to need a few things. Okay. So let's move this here. Sometimes you got to get a little creative with that. And then let's just move this stuff out of the way, just like that. All right, your webinar landing page needs a few things. It needs the date and time of the webinar. Okay, that's a given. It needs the title, the 3 main points you're going to speak about. If you're going to do more than 3 main points, then obviously you want to include those as well. But at a minimum, you want those 3 main points. You need to tell them if spaces are limited or not. You want to have your host information, including image, credibility, and I like to include a short testimonial or quote from someone who has already either watched the webinar or worked with me based on the things that we are planning to talk about in the webinar. So I'm going to put optional right here. Okay, so that makes a really good webinar landing page. Now, when you watch this video on how to create a webinar landing page, I walked you through the software that I use to quickly create webinar landing pages, and I actually provide for you that template so that you can get up and running that much faster. You literally can just click the link. It'll open your very own ClickFunnels account if you don't have one already. If you do have one already, it'll put that template directly in your account, and then you can start making your own edits based on how I show you in the video. All right, now when you create an ad based on the landing page, that's very, very simple. Your ad that's based on the landing page is going to have the same things as above. It's going to have the title of your webinar, your 3 main points, your testimonial, which is optional, a date and time, if spaces are limited or not. The way that I like to do this, because typically I like to take a live webinar and immediately convert it to an automated webinar and let it run over and over and over again. Instead of putting a date time, I'll just say the webinar is happening soon. That way, if that ad that I create works really, really well, I can just keep running that ad. I have an ad that I've been running for at least a year or more that has done really, really well. It still has a relevance score of 10. It's the exact same ad that I use for my live webinar, and I've been able to use it for the automated webinar because I didn't put the date and time in there. If you do put the date and time in there and you happen to edit the content, then you'll have to create a new ad. I've been using Facebook, and Facebook won't allow you to edit an ad once it's been run as an ad. Okay, so you can check the box. Now, I'm going to put on the side that this is optional as well. There are several ways that you can get webinar registrations, and I guess we can kind of create an ad under inviting people. So let's say how to get webinar registrations. Well, you can create an ad based on the landing page. And we're going to change the size of this text because now it's looking pretty small. 12 pics. And then we'll delete this one. Okay, now we're going to put that one there, and then we're also going to say email your list here. And we're going to erase this one here. Okay, this is what I really love about mind mapping, because as you go through, you can make changes based on the way that you're actually thinking this thought process through. Okay, so the next thing you do after you've written your webinar, you've got your landing page ready, now it's time to invite people. Couple different ways that you can get webinar registrations. Once again, I created an entire video with all the details on how you can do this and how you can get 100 webinar registrations. Emailing your list, whoever is on your list already, creating an ad based on the landing page, obviously, which is optional, or creating an ad is optional. It's not optional to base it on the landing page. Okay. When some people feel like, oh, I can't do a webinar until I've actually built up a list. But the truth is that a webinar will help you build your list. Not only that, but it'll help you build your list with targeted people, with people who specifically want to hear more about that topic. If that topic is mainly what you talk about and that's your webinar, then people who are coming onto your list because they want to learn more about that topic, whether they buy or not right away, those are people who are interested. Those are leads, people who are interested in your topic. That's one of the best ways to grow your list. Trying to create a lot of smaller, like tangential items to try to grow your list is not necessarily as effective as creating a webinar. However, I typically do recommend that you start with like a lead magnet, only because creating a webinar is a little bit of a larger project. And what happens is people tend to stop before they even get started because they get overwhelmed by the process of creating a webinar. So sometimes it's easier to, once you have your offer, create your lead magnet that's like a checklist or a PDF or something like that, because done is better than perfect. And so sometimes we need to just mark off those quick wins that we can get. Okay, so inviting people, emailing your list, creating an ad. Now, once you've invited people, and I'm going to just quickly do this because one of the things that I really do like about this software is that you can change the colors. So I'm going to change these colors up here. All I'm doing here is right clicking and then I click to choose the style. Okay, so I just wanted to provide that as an example. All right, the next thing that you're going to do is set up your webinar software. Now, your webinar software could be a paid software that allows you to host live webinars. It could be something like Zoom. So with Zoom, you can get 45 minutes for free. It's either the first 40 or 45 minutes. And then you'll need to switch to the paid plan if you want to host a webinar on Zoom. The webinar version actually, I believe, is a higher price point, but you can also use the regular Zoom function, but you're going to see everyone's face because it's going to be like a team meeting type of conference room. So you just want to be really careful about that. If you want your webinar to look really professional, if you don't get the actual webinar software from Zoom, then it's going to look like a conference meeting. So just be careful here and actually choose the webinar option. Okay. And the first 40 minutes free for conference style. All right. The next option you have is you can do a Facebook Live. This is one of my favorites simply because I like to grab people who just happen to be on Facebook and then they also happen to hop into the webinar. So it gives me an opportunity to reach more people if I'm doing a free webinar. Another thing you can do is YouTube Live. The reason that I like this is because YouTube will email. They will email your subscribers as soon as you go live. So YouTube essentially broadcasts for you. Okay, it'll tell your audience that you're live. So I really like YouTube Live for that reason. Some other options that you can do are actually purchasing a webinar software. But the thing that I really like to do is instead of just using Facebook Live natively or just using YouTube Live natively, I like to use OBS, which is Open Broadcaster Software. And what this does is it allows you to share your face as well as slides at the same time. Now, I have this video on how to host a webinar for free. If you need more help on using Open Broadcaster software, then when you watch this video, I show you exactly how to set that up. Okay, so you've invited people, you wrote your webinar, you got your landing page ready, you've invited people so everyone knows that you're about to host your webinar, you've set up your webinar software, and inside of this video I show you how to do that with Facebook Live. So you set up that webinar software, you've grabbed the link, you know how to send people to the webinar once it's time to go live, you know how to send an email out. Okay, so that's going to be the next thing that we do. We're going to send link to live webinar. Okay, so you're going to email your list. You'll tell them, hey, the webinar is ready to go. I don't have a video specifically on how to create an email, but if that's something that you guys would like, just let me know and I can create a specific how to create an email broadcast. I like using ConvertKit in order to send all of my emails. Okay, if you don't already have a ConvertKit account and you'd like to get one set up, let me just go ahead really quickly. I would be remiss if I didn't do this. You can go to LaTishaStyles.com/free30 ConvertKit, and it will give you your first 30 days for free so you can try out ConvertKit. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to share a link to the sales page or the booking page. So if as you're doing your webinar, when you come to the end of it and you have your pitch, you're going to give them the link to go directly to your sales page or booking page. And then you'll send the email that has the replay on it. That's really it. That's how you host your first webinar. Now let me show you what this would look like if you wanted to actually present it. I'm going to come back out full screen so you can see what we're doing. So as I hit these minimize buttons, I'm in presentation mode. You can see that that's selected. I can start presenting this coggle and basically hide everything else and then just open up the pieces that I want to open up. So you saw me go through and actually start writing each of these out. But once you have it written out and you'd like to present it, you can do this, present anywhere. I really like this because it's a kind of a dynamic way to present. Once you've got these going, all you do is hit the plus button to open those up. Remember, you have to be in presentation mode. And anywhere you drag, you won't be moving or shifting anything around. You'll just be moving the presentation around on the background here. And it'll give you the opportunity to kind of swing things around. So what I like to do is I like to post an image right there in the middle so that right before I go live for my presentation, I just click that eyeball. We've got that going, and then you just click out on the outside of it, and then you can get going with the rest of it. All right, so thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial. If you have any more questions, definitely leave them in the comment box below and we can get the conversation started. That thing is flying. Where'd it go? I hope it's not on me. Don't let it be on me. Why do you have to fly around? Why can't you just be? Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Marketing Tools and Tech. If you need more help with your webinar, you're definitely going to want to join my free training. Now, in this free training, I give you my exact process of how I quickly write a webinar, how I create a webinar to book coaching clients, and how I get webinar registrations for cheap so that my return on investment is that much higher. All you have to do is click the link in the description box in order to join, or you can go to you'vegotclients.com/anti-webinar. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comment box below. We can get the conversation started. In the meantime, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.